Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Goblin Pod. I'm your host, Josiah Robinson Leary. I'm here with Mason Fullerton, Zach Collier, Charlie Payne, and Jason Glick. And right now, we're here in Green Lane. And to start the show, I want to talk about World Series predictions. Who we have coming out, the NL and the AL. And I want to start with you, Zach, big baseball guy.
So for starters, obviously the Braves are one of the biggest contenders in the NL, one of the best teams in baseball, and the record shows it. Pitching is still strong. Max Fried recently came off the IL, and they're looking to make that final playoff push. They've basically all but clinched the NL East. But like if you look at the AL, it's a lot more tight. Like the Orioles have a good record, but the Rays could come back at any time, even with their recent setbacks with the losses of Wander Franco and Shane McClanahan. Uh, there's also the Rangers, who are only a few games ahead of the Astros for their division lead. It's a close race, and I feel almost certain that if you can win that any division spot, you'll definitely be in a very strong position for contending for a World Series.
Um, you know, I like the way the Astros look. Uh, they have a pretty even split when we're talking home and away, and I feel like they're a consistent team. They won in 2019. I know there's been like the whole cheating thing with them, but in general, the Astros are a good franchise, and I could definitely see them making a trip to the World Series as we see B come through our gazebo. And does anyone else have a take on this one?
I guess so. So I feel like
Whoa, we have a B in
I could maybe in one of those other rooms.
Josiah has a good point. Like the Astros are a consistent team, and I think fans do have to get over what happened with the cheating. I mean, it's a different era, and they proved to be really good last year. I mean, they won the World Series, and I feel like AL wise. There's a lot of strong teams. I mean, the Rangers have been one up for discussion for a while now, and I mean, Scherzer had a really good night the other night. I think it was like 11 strikeouts, and they're also a team that I could see be in that talk. I mean, the Rays, they're a talk too, but I mean, I think there's a lot of really good teams. The Yankees obviously really not in this discussion. I mean, they also fell short last year, but I really personally could see the Rangers coming in there. It's like sneaking into at least an AL final.
And Charlie and Jason, do you guys have anything to add about World Series or NL or how the NL or the AL is looking right
Oh
now?
yeah, for sure, 100%.
All right.
I mean, in the NL, obviously it's the Atlanta Braves. Come on, they got Max Fried
Don't forget the Phillies.
and Ronald Acuña Jr. I mean, the Phillies, they're a great baseball team. Obviously we saw what happened last year. They were a wild card team. They got all the way to the postseason. But with the Atlanta Braves, it could be a great matchup between them and the Phillies. Maybe if we'll see what happens with that. But in the AL, I personally have the Baltimore Orioles. I mean, this is a team that's been slept on a lot. Even though they have a record of 74 and 46, they are a very good baseball team. And now, especially with a little bit of help from the Tampa Bay Rays, Wander Franco is out for personal reasons, and then Shane McClanahan is also out on the 60-day IL. So their team just weakened. And all they got to really watch out for is the Astros in the AL. So just watch out for the Orioles and Adley Rutschman.
One thing I want to add about the NL, obviously the consensus here is that the Atlanta Braves are the best team in the NL, but here's just one thing for you guys. The Braves not only lead the league in batting average, not in RBIs, but they also lead the league in home runs with 45 more than the team in second place, being the LA Dodgers, who are another potential contender in the NL, as they just picked up Kike Hernandez and several other players at the deadline. And when I look at the Atlanta Braves, I just see a nine-man rotation that literally could do anything. I mean, you have four guys above 27 homers, and Matt Olson having an incredible year. He just broke 40. I don't really see a team stopping the Braves. And then I'll go with my pick in the AL. I'd probably say the Texas Rangers at this point are probably one of the top teams out of there. I think they have a great chance. We know Adolis Garcia made the home run derby this year, and he's on pace for potentially breaking 40. He already has 30 right now. So I think there's several teams more in the AL. Like in the AL East, I think teams like the Rays and the Orioles have a great chance. And then I see the NL being a bit more closed, with the AL being more wide open, as the Braves are obviously the favorite in the NL right now.
Just add one more thing about the NL.
Yep.
Yeah, I forgot to talk about the NL. I mean, obviously the Braves have been a clear, runner, not even just of the NL, but the MLB in general have probably been the most consistently best team, at least in the last couple of years. And I think, just judging off of how their season has gone, I mean, they hit like the most wins out of any team consistently this year. I mean, their lineup is really good. You really can't beat it. It's a very good roster. And, the Phillies last year, of course, did, prove that they could beat the Braves. But at the same time, the Phillies can be a very inconsistent team. Unfortunately, we've seen the season, between injuries, Bryce has been in and out. And if there is a team that I do think could contest with the Braves, I think it'd be the Phillies. Because if the Phillies had to play the Padres again, they clearly proved in the last series that they played against them almost a month ago in July, it was a 4-1 win against them in the series. And I think that it's definitely going to be a very interesting playoff race, but I would still have in the NL the Braves just because they just seem to be the safe team. But before we go on, I just want to the Orioles definitely could be a sneaky team. They're definitely a team that has proven to win. They've won a lot of games, and they've beat a lot of good teams. But I'm still going to go Rangers, AL, Braves, NL.
All right. We got a lot of good baseball talk from all five guys. Me personally, I feel like the Phillies are poised to do it again. But it's time to switch the topic. We're going to talk football. And our first topic of conversation will be the NFL MVP. Now, the most valuable player can most commonly QB, but it can be anyone. And from great seasons from guys who won Offensive Player of the Year, a lot of QBs poised for good pushes after a lot of team improvement. I want to hear what everyone has to say about the QB position or pretty much any position fighting for the NFL MVP. I'm going to start on this side with Jason Glick. What do you think about MVP?
I think this MVP race is going to be great again this year, as it always has been. I mean, there's always a clear cut, maybe top 2 or 3 every year, but I think that my pick this year is going to be a guy who hasn't won this award yet in his young career. He has a fantastic supporting cast, and his team actually just made a fantastic signing on the offensive line that's going to really help him. And the guy the offensive tackle, got a lot of criticism for his regular season performance, but I will say he helped his team a ton in the playoffs and was arguably the best tackle in the playoffs. And the tackle I'm talking about is Orlando Brown, and the quarterback I'm talking about is Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow has the best supporting cast at the receiver position of any quarterback in the NFL. I think he also has fantastic pocket presence and accuracy, which will obviously help his case. And I think he's a guy that is capable of putting up those eye-popping statistics that the MVP voters really love to see. I think that going north of 4,700 yards and 40 passing touchdowns isn't a stretch for someone like Joe Burrow, and I think he's going to be a bit more safer with the ball now that they drafted Chase Brown, and they're going to have him and Joe Mixon, so they're going to be running it a bit more conservatively. And their defense is also going to help them as whether people disagree on this or not, but the NFL MVP also kind of depends on how a team's success goes. And that being the case, the Bengals defense has really stepped up this past year, and I was really impressed with that. So I just think when you combine all those factors and how good this team I think is going to be in the regular season, I think Joe Burrow, this is his award to lose. I think he is set in the perfect position to win this one in year 4.
All right. Now, that was a good take with Joe Burrow. Again, he has a really strong team, and they've shown that they can get it done in the postseason, and they can make a long stretch. And, they proved that for years to come, they're going to be a winning organization. Now, he's a very talented QB, a lot of talented pieces. Again, you mentioned the run game is going to be mixed up a little bit. Just all making the job easier for Joe Burrow. But I want to go to Charlie, and I want to see whether he's going to agree and say Joe Burrow or if he's going to have another candidate in mind.
Well, yeah, Joe Burrow, I certainly think he, would win the MVP. 4,475 passing yards, 35-12 touchdown to interception ratio. But I'm also going to go with a guy that has not won this award yet, and I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins of the Minnesota Vikings.
Interesting.
Kirk Cousins last year led his team to a 14-3 record. I know they lost in the first round of the playoffs to the New York Giants. The playoff jitters were there, but this guy did great last year. 4,547 passing yards. I know it's a 29-14 touchdown to interception ratio, which is not, it's not good, but it's not bad either. He does have maybe even a future MVP in Justin Jefferson. So, I think I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins. So, yeah.
All right, that was an interesting take. But I know Kirk Cousins, he has that big playability, but his biggest question mark is his performance in prime time. And in order for him to win the MVP award, I think that would probably have to be addressed. But I'm going to take it over to Mason and see what he has to say about MVP.
I just want to, before I go into mine, because I do disagree with both of our current, two picks. I do think Joe Burrow is definitely one of the, at least my top 3 of potential ones this year. He really came back off of that really terrible injury he had when he was just starting off his NFL career, and then took his team to the Super Bowl. Of course, falling short to the Rams, but also to a QB who's had a lot more experience. And the stats don't lie. Burrow has been very good. He's a very accurate passer. Kirk Cousins, though, as Charlie said, I don't know how much I agree with that, but it does take a good QB to throw to someone that is as good as Justin Jefferson, because it's not just a one-man thing. You need 2 people, as a QB and relationship. And he's definitely been in the league for a while to have the experience. I could see it maybe in a couple years, but I'm going to go a different route here to Jalen Hurts, and someone who, fell short last year, of course, in the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously it's not really like his starting year, but it was really his first year starting. Wentz was a starter his first year, and Hurts came in here and there. And we didn't really know what to expect this season. Like, the Eagles fell short the season before, of course, and we were all curious what was going to happen, and it was definitely a good thing for Philadelphia and Eagles fans, of course. And I just think he really is a leader of this team, and it showed it in the last couple of weeks before the playoff run, where Hurts was out with that little injury. I can't really remember exactly what it was, but the Eagles almost lost 3 straight and lost their chance of clinching the NFC spot. And that's pretty big, because it really does show that even though the Eagles have depth, they still do need a QB, and it's not just the whole team. Like, Jalen Hurts does have a lot of, fight in him and a lot of potential. And to me, I just really see, not even if, the Eagles go back to a Super Bowl or not, but if Hurts really performs well, of course, that could be up for it, but I actually take back what I said. I think it really Hurts could only win it if they do make it to the Super Bowl again. Win or lose, I think it could still be a good chance, and that's my take on that.
All right. And I know there's a lot of correlation to team success and an MVP winner, but we do have to remember that it is a regular season award. Super Bowl or not, that doesn't really matter when considering the MVP award. It's more about the win-loss total in the year. But I think Jalen Hurts is a good take. And before we get to Zach, I want to kind of toss my little 2 cents in here. For the MVP award, I want to go with a guy who's already won the award before and who I think has had a bolstered receiving core. And, he's in a tough division, but after a year of being hurt and after a big contract, I know he's hungry to get back into the mix of things. And I'm going to go Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson is poised for an MVP award. He's explosive. And now he's really going to be able to show off his arm talent and passing ability with new receivers like Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman growing into his own. And, I'm really excited to see what Lamar Jackson's going to bring to the field, of course, if he stays healthy. And he's kept his team, every time he's healthy, he keeps his team as a winning team, no matter the supporting cast. And I'm going to take this to Zach, see if he agrees with me or one of the guys who talked before. And, yeah.
I agree with most of these, but I'm actually going to go outside the traditional quarterback position. I think Justin Jefferson really has a chance to make his case in the MVP race this year. I mean, every year he's like, oh, this is incredible. He can't do better. And then he, adds a couple 100 yards each year. And I feel like this year, if he does that again, he's easily MVP. All he really needs is a good quarterback throwing him to him, and I'd say Kirk Cousins can definitely be that QB. He just creates space. He's always open. It's very, very difficult to cover him. You only see it only in rare cases is he actually shut down that wild card game. Most of the time he's just uncoverable. And I feel like compared to the rest of the wide receivers, he's 3 steps ahead. And I feel like that should put him as a candidate to look out for in the MVP race.
All right. That was a good take. I really enjoyed that you went outside of the traditional QB position, because if anyone could do it, I think it's Justin Jefferson, especially with what you mentioned, and plus just his overall charisma and swag. What he brings to the game is just really good for viewers, and he's just going to inspire a whole new generation of wide receivers and football players alike. And sticking to the topic of football, I want to transition into a different topic. I know we talked MVP, but I want to talk positionally. like the best at a certain position, and that position's running back. Running back has received a lot of like hatred lately. Saying running backs aren't consistent. People don't want to pay running backs, and I say for this podcast or here on the Goblin Pod, I want to show some running backs some love. And right now we're gonna talk best running back, and we're gonna go right back to you, Zach. Who do you think is the best running back in the NFL right now?
I think with little doubt, it's Christian McCaffrey. He's probably the most dangerous two-way threat. He's great in the running game. He's got great speed, great elusiveness. And then he's a real threat in the passing game if you get him out of the backfield. He can have like 1,000 yards rushing and 500 yards receiving if he stays healthy. And last year we saw what we wanted to see from him. He had injury issues historically, but he got a healthy season and got traded to a much better offense. And even with quarterback definitely wasn't set in stone there, but I feel like this year as it gets more, he's just going to do even better than last year.
All right, I like that take. You mentioned Christian McCaffrey's diversity, which is a really big thing in running backs now, especially with it being more of a passing game. So it's really important that you're still able to pound the rock like traditional football, and also get out of the backfield and be able to make plays in the passing game. And with the take of Christian McCaffrey being the best in the league, I'm going to send it to Mason, see what he thinks about that.
I mean, I do pretty much agree. I think Christian McCaffrey, I mean, before I do get into more of the players, like I think the running back, like Josiah was starting with our intro to it, it's definitely a position which I don't understand why people, don't like to, I don't know why people discourage it so much. It's definitely a tough, every position in football is tough, but it's very tough to be a running back also. You're getting hit very hard as most offensive positions and even defensive, but it's just like there's so many different types of running backs too, which is what is so unique about football too with really most positions. And Christian McCaffrey is a very good two-way player. He can catch, as he's shown, and he's very speedy. I mean, he hurdles over guys like it's nothing half the time. And of course he's dealt with injury, unfortunately, and I think that he still has a lot in him, even though last year was not as much of a year, I feel like, as most people expected. But then you can also look at players like Saquon too, who's been out for a while, but before was on a tear. I mean, he was really, really good. And of course, if we're just talking about who I think right now, we haven't seen Saquon play in a while. And of course, there's a lot of other people you could go with here. But I think I'm going to just agree with Zach and play it safe with Christian McCaffrey. I could very well see Saquon coming back in this discussion. I mean, there's plenty of other people too that I haven't mentioned. But I think I'm just going to keep it simple with McCaffrey today.
Now, I like that you guys both went with McCaffrey. I appreciate a running back who can do both things, like run it and catch it in the receiving field. But I'm gonna go before we get into other guys. I'm gonna go with my take, and I want to go with a running back who's more straight ground and pound. He's rushed for 2,000 yards 2 times in his career, in his young career, and he's just a dominant force on the field. And when he's healthy, there's no stopping him. And I'm gonna go with Derrick Henry. Now, especially since he has his alone backfield, it's just him. He is going to get an insane amount of carries, insane amount of yards as usual, and there's no stopping him. And even in years, I get like the Tennessee Titans aren't seen as one of the NFL powerhouses anymore, but I think they'll play competitive football strictly because of Derrick Henry. Because we've seen Titans teams that weren't really strongest all around, but Derrick Henry is able to keep them in the mix of things.